Hello fashion DIY lovers, welcome to the channel. Today's video is going to be on how to make a shoulder dart bustier. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to cut, pad and sew a simple shoulder dart bustier, and this video is totally beginners friendly. So if you want to know how I achieved this very simple but beautiful shoulder dart bustier, keep watching and please do not forget to give this video a like. If you're yet to subscribe to this channel, please hit the subscribe button and let's get started. So I'm going to start by drafting this on a pattern paper. So this is a pattern paper I'm working with, and let's just assume this pattern paper is on fold. But if you are working on your material, if you're working directly on your fabric, go ahead and place your fabric on fold before cutting. So at the top of my pattern paper, I'm going to be marking out 1 inch. I'll mark out 1 inch. From this 1 inch, I'll be taking out the allowance for the joining at the shoulders. So just go ahead and mark out 1 inch at the top of your pattern paper. We'll come back to this later. And from this line, I'll be marking out all the vertical measurements. The first vertical measurement I'm going to mark will be the bust point. That is the measurement from your shoulder to the bust point. And the next vertical measurement I'm going to be taking will be the under bust point, so from the shoulders to the under bust. And the next vertical measurement will be the waist point, from the shoulders to the waist point, and I'll be adding 1 inch for sewing allowance. So after marking out this point, I'll go ahead and label the bust point, the under bust and the waist point. So after marking out the bust point, the under bust and the waist points, I'll go back to the shoulder line and I'll be marking the shoulder measurement. The shoulder I'm working with is 16 inches. 16 inches divided by 2 is 8 inches. So I will just make a point where I have my 8 inches and I'll be leaving that for now. We'll come back to that later. So we're not creating any armhole for now. So just mark that, leave that point for now. We'll go back to it. And the next thing I'm doing is to create the neck. So I'm using 3 by 4 inches for the neck. So there's actually no definite measurement for this. So just go ahead and create any neck design of your choice. So the next thing to do is to mark out the bust span. The bust span is the distance between the two busts. So the bust span I'm working with is 9 inches. 9 inches divided by 2 is 4.5 inches, but I'll be adding ½ inch, making it 5 inches. The ½ inch is for the sewing allowance. So I'm going to be marking 5 inches from the bust point down to the under bust and down to the waist point. So I'll just make a straight line to connect the 3 points. So the next thing to do is to create the under bust tightening. And the formula I'll be using to create the under bust tightening is the bust circumference minus the under bust circumference divided by 2. So the bust measurement I'm working with is 42 inches. 42 inches minus 36 inches will give me 6 inches. So I'll be dividing my answer by 2. So 6 inches divided by 2 is 3 inches. So I'm going to be dividing the 3 inches between the center front and the side. So I'm working with 3 inches for my under bust tightening. So on this point, I can come in here by ½ inch and 2.5 inch by the side, or I could decide to use 1 inch or 2 inches by the side. So make sure whatever measurement you are placing by the side is bigger than what you are placing on the center front, but make sure you don't exceed 1 inch by the center front. So for the center front, since I'm working with 3 inches for my under bust tightening, I will go in by 1 inch, and on the side, I'll go in by 2 inches. And I'll be repeating the same thing on the waist point. Now go ahead and connect. So after after marking this, I'll be connecting this to my bust point. But before connecting this to my bust point, on my bust point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. So the reason why I came down by this 1 inch from the bust point is to give the bust enough room to relax well and to eliminate any sharpness around the bust point. So I'll just go ahead and connect these 2 points together. After creating the under bust tightening, I'll come back to the shoulder line. So I'm going to be dividing, I will measure these 2 points, and whatever thing I have, I'm going to divide into 2. And I'll be connecting these points to my bust points. So after connecting this to the bust points, on this shoulder line, on the center front, I'll go in by 1/2 inch, and on the side, I'll go out by 1 inch. So I'll be connecting these points to the bust points. So before connecting to the bust point, on my bust point, I will go up by 1 inch. So the reason I went up by 1 inch is the same reason I came down by 1 inch on the bust point, is to eliminate any sharpness around the bust area and to make the bust relax so well in the blouse. So I'll be connecting this point to this point, and I'll be connecting this point to this point. With this method, you can see I've eliminated any sharpness around the bust. So after doing this, the next thing we are going to do is the dart replacement. So I'll be replacing the dart from the shoulder. So the dart I took out from this place is 1.5 inch. So I'm going to replace 1.5 inch. And remember, after cutting this, I'm going to be joining this with 1/2 inch. So I'll be adding the 1/2 inch for joining. After replacing my shoulder measurement and adding the allowance, I'll be marking out the armhole. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and I'll be connecting. So from my shoulder slope, I'm going to be marking my chest line. So the formula I use for getting my chest line is the bust point minus 2 inches. So the bust point I'm working with is 11 inches. 11 inches minus 2 inches is 9 inches. So 9 inches is going to be my chest line, and which is also going to be serving as my armhole depth. So whatever thing I have here, I'm going to divide into 2, and from this point I'll go in. I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch. This is to eliminate any bulginess around the armhole. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'll start placing my measurements, and I'll be starting from the bust measurement. So the bust measurement I'm working with is 42 inches. 42 inches divided by 4 is 10.5, and I'll be adding 2 inches for the sewing allowance. And the under bust I'm working with is 36 inches. 36 inches divided by 4 is 9 inches. And remember, I'm going to replace my dart. So after marking the 9 inches, I'm going to replace the dart I took out. So just measure this place, whatever you have. So we took that of 3 inches for here. So I'm going to replace the dart of 3 inches, and I'll be marking the 2 inches for my sewing allowance. And the waist measurement I'm working with is 38 inches. 38 inches divided by 4 is 9.5 inches. I'm going to replace my dart of 3 inches, and I'll be adding 2 inches for the sewing allowance. So after replacing my dart and marking out all the allowance, I'll go ahead and connect all the points together. So I'll go ahead and cut this out. But before cutting out, remember this 1 inch I left at the top. I said at the beginning of the video that I'll be taking the shoulder joining allowance from there. So at this point, I'll be marking out 1/2 inch from the top of my shoulders. I'll be marking out ½ inch, which is going to serve as the joining allowance for this top. So this ½ inch I'm taking out is going to serve as the shoulder joining allowance. So I'll go ahead and cut this out. So before cutting that, in order not to confuse you, I'll go ahead and shade the areas I'm cutting out, so you don't cut the place you are not supposed to cut. So these places I'm shading are the places we are going to cut out. So after cutting, this is what we have, and you might be wondering why this side is looking slanted. It's because of the 3 inches that replacements that we did. So after sewing, everything is going to align and this place is going to be straight. So after doing this, the next thing to do is to cut out the back part of our top. For the back part, the first thing to do, I'll be marking out the zip allowance. I'm using 1.5 inch for my zipper allowance. You can use 1 inch. After marking out the zip allowance, I'll be marking out the chest point, the bust point, and the waist point. So after marking the shoulder line, the chest line, the bust line, the under bust line, and the waist line, so I'll be placing the shoulder measurement, which is 16 inches divided by 2, 8 inches. I'll be adding ½ inch for sewing allowance. For the neck width, I took 3.5 inches. I'm just going to come down by 2 inches for this. So you can use any neck measurement of your choice. And for the shoulder slope, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. And from there, I'll be creating my armhole depth. After creating the armhole depth, I'm going to be marking out the bust span. Remember the bust span I used for the front, I'll be using the same bust span for the back of my top. And from the waistline, I'm going to go in by ½ inch on both sides, and I'll connect this to the chest line. So after doing this, I'll go ahead and start placing my measurements. I'll place my bust measurement plus 2 inches sewing allowance. And please do not forget to replace your darts as well. For the under bust, I'm going to place my measurement, and I'll also replace my dart and add my sewing allowance, and I'll be doing the same thing on the waist point. After measuring, I'll go ahead and connect the points together. So after doing this, I'll go ahead and create the armhole curve. After doing this, before cutting, I'll come back to the shoulder and add ½ inch for the shoulder joining allowance, just as I did for the front parts of this top. After cutting the front and the back pattern, the next step to do is to transfer this to the actual fabric. Remember, I've added every allowance we'll be needing, so we won't be adding any allowance on the fabric again. So we'll be cutting exactly what we have on the pattern paper. So after cutting the front and the back pattern, I'll go ahead and transfer it to the actual fabric. And please do not forget to place your fabric on fold before cutting. So after transferring the pattern to the fabric, I also went ahead to iron a very light interface on the fabric. So it's time to cut out the breast pad or the bust pad for this top. So I'm going to keep this aside, and I'll go back to the pattern. I'll be using this pattern to cut out the bust pad. So I'm just going to arrange it. Make sure you arrange it very well. Making sure the bust points meet, I'll just use my sellotape to hold this down in place. After holding it down, you see this chest line. I'll be extending the chest line to the center front. So after extending the chest line to the center front, on the side where I have my chest line, I'll go up by 2 inches. and I'm going to extend this to the center front. So after creating this line, I'll go to the side of my pattern, and on the bust point I'll be marking my bust span. My bust span, which is 9 inches divided by 2, is 4.5 inches, and I'll be adding ½ inch for the sewing allowance. So after doing this, I'll be connecting this point to this point on my bust point. So I'll just connect like this, and from this bust point I'll connect to the under bust. So just do this until you get a good curve. After doing this, you can go ahead and blend this very well. So just make sure you have a good curve. I'll keep blending until I have a good cup. After doing this, I'll cut this from the under bust. I'm going to cut this from this. So you can see how this is matching already. So I'll be using this to cut the bust part. So remember, we are cutting 2 of these for the left and the right side of the top. And please do not forget, the center front is just one piece and is always on fold. So after cutting the breast part with the method I showed you, you should have them looking like this. So the next thing to do is to take this to the ironing table and give this a very good press. So after ironing the breast part to this, I'll take this to the sewing machine. I'll be joining this by ½ inch. So you can see the points I'm meeting. I'll be joining this by ½ inch to the shoulder point. Okay guys, this is what we have after sewing. You can see how well placed the breast part is. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be notching. So after notching, I'll get my ironing ball. I'll take it under this. I'm going to open this up, and I'll be using my pressing iron to iron this down. You can see what I'm doing. So after ironing this way, I'll turn this over to the right side. I'll take my ironing ball in again. And give this a very good press. Okay, after I'm done ironing, this is what we have. You can see how beautiful and well structured this pattern is looking even before making the actual blouse. So please let me know what you think about this tutorial in the comment section, and please encourage me by giving this video a like and hit the subscribe button if you are yet to join this beautiful family. Thanks for watching, and see you in my next video. Bye.